Hi, folks. It's Professor Diffley. This is History 100, Module 5, Chapter 4. So we are now moving from the classical to the Hellenistic world. So this is the videos from the professor for this week. As always, just a brief run through of what we're doing this week. You get the learning goals and objectives. The required readings. Important, no discussion board this week. There is a discussion board this week, due by the end of the week, as always. There are lecture slides with notes, and very important for this week is videos, especially on Plato and Aristotle. You see that pretty much all of them deal with that, and the Stoicism one at the bottom. A lot of philosophy this week. This is a era where you see a growing amount of this really blossoming. So make sure you take a look at those, especially for Plato and Aristotle. I'm not going to talk a lot about them because these videos do a fantastic job of that. I actually use these in my philosophy ethics courses for those. So make sure you take a look at those there. So again, remember the learning goals and objectives are always really helpful for looking at the what you should focus on for the week. So again, take a look there. I know it's a long list, but it really does cover everything that's in there. And I broke even like stuff on some of the topics into smaller topics. So this could be a little shorter of a list, but I wanted to make sure everything was written out there as possible. So let's dive into the lectures here. Again, as always, there's notes, as you can see. Always notes for these. Make sure you take a read through those. As always, read the textbook, that sort of thing. So let's dive in. So we're at the end of the Peloponnesian War here. Big topics this era will be the end of the Peloponnesian War, what happens to Socrates, the philosophies of Aristotle and Plato, then especially Alexander the Great and the new era of history, the Hellenistic era that he ushers in there. So let's just start with this. What happens after the war? Well, Athens is defeated. Its long walls are torn down, connecting the city of Athens and port of the Piraeus. But over time, Athens begins its economic recovery. You have a lot of small business owners, these private business owners, working out of their homes, small shops. Once they rebuild the long walls, which they eventually do, it allows commerce to begin to change. But it takes a while for it to come back. Changes for Athenian workers. Women who had usually been in a secondary citizenship category within Athens begin to have more and more public life, mostly because many of their husbands or others are dead as a result of the war. Many farmers, because the countryside had been ravaged, begin to move inside. Overall, though, you do begin to see a growth of the economy again. It's going to take a while, but it will get there. One of the things, though, Athens is, bitter about its defeat, as you think you would be. And they lash out, and this often happens. They're looking for a scapegoat. How does it explain Athens? Remember, this was the golden age of Athens. Now it has fallen. And they lash out at Socrates, one of its most famous citizens and philosophers. The problem is after the Spartans take over and win, they install tyrants in Athens. The 30 tyrants. It's a very, very brutal era. In there, Critias, one of Socrates' students, was the worst and most violent of them all. And so people pointed to him, even though 29 other people are doing these awful things. They make connection between Critias and Socrates, and they begin to blame him. They argue that he had taught impiety and piety, pretty much teaching foreign gods, really going against the values. That was one of the fears of all of the sophists, and especially Socrates. They were going against what many believe were the how do I put this? The core values, belief systems of the Greeks. That he corrupted the youth, that sort of thing, and so they go after him as a result. I mean, it's hard to see how Socrates taught Critias this. It really doesn't go together. But nonetheless, again, when you're looking for a scapegoat, you will find them in there. Socrates is put on trial, charged and put on trial. His reaction to the charges, he says he should be given an award for making them think rather than punished. And he really doesn't try to defend himself for a while. His friends finally talk him into it, because usually the option is death or exile. Most people, when they're found with death and then given the chance to leave, they will take it. Socrates, though, accepts his fate of execution and drinks a drink made of hemlock, which is very poisonous to humans. And he finally dies, ushering in this new era. Interestingly, Athenians quickly realize afterwards what a mistake this was to pin it all on Socrates, to get rid of one of their greatest citizens ever and thinkers. But nonetheless, the deed was done. This is going to have a profound effect going forward, especially on these two, Plato and Aristotle. And you can go through the videos. I even put it here in the big slide here to make sure you see that. One of the biggest things, and this is, we'll come back to that picture in a second, one of the biggest things that's going to have an impact on them, especially their thoughts on government. The way the Athenians and their democracy lashed out at Socrates makes them fear democracy. This is going to be a long-running theme in Western Civ, is that the people cannot be trusted. The masses are not that smart. They will lash out. They don't think things through. So instead of allowing democracy, Plato and Aristotle, two of the most influential of these philosophers and, in many ways, political scientists to a degree, really do turn them away from that. They instead want either enlightened despots, these enlightened rulers, or really restricting leadership of politics to the best of us, as they'll say. And you see that in Plato's Republic, where he views society as hierarchical, and only the best amongst us should be allowed to run things. Again, take it out of the hands of the masses is going to be one of their big views on this. So this is one thing you'll see in the videos, but this is from a famous painting later called The School of Athens, all of their great philosophers. But this really, on the left here, you have Plato, then you have Aristotle, really does capture their views on this. As you can see, Plato is pointing up to the sky. He's going to be talking about his forms, that truth and knowledge is some, it's ethereal, it's metaphysics, it's beyond us. Where Aristotle is going to say, no, we can understand the world here, and right here on the ground, by observing through empiricism, which is observations, logic, that sort of thing. This is one of the best that captures their differences. Aristotle says it's beyond us. We can barely see the forms. You're going to see that in his allegory of the cave. For Plato, and then Aristotle will say, no, he's one of the first, true scientific method believers there. But as you can see in this painting, they are actually in the center of it all there. Again, you could look through all of this, as you see, the allegory of the cave, metaphysics, the forms, that really comes out in the allegory of the caves, and especially this concept of dualism, which will make itself into much of Western Civ, the idea that we are, our bodies and our souls, and two separate things that one would live on. But you can take a look through all that. His utopia. Utopia is an interesting word from Greek because it means both no place and good place at the same time. So utopia is this, maybe peaceful world, perfect world in the future. He's going to have this hierarchy and that, and you can see about that in the videos there. Again, Aristotle, scientist and philosopher here, and again, you can take a look at that, especially his concept of virtue ethics and virtue theory going forward. All right, on to this. So what is another big picture of after happens that's around after the Peloponnesian War? This took a toll on everybody, especially Sparta. It's endless, near ceaseless war making is really going to weaken all of Greece. You're going to have in the years afterwards all these shifting alliances, these continuing wars. It's just going to batter the heck out of everybody there. And so what happens, no single city-state could dominate the others, but nonetheless, they keep trying. This creates a power vacuum within Greece. As they're fighting each other, they open themselves up for others to take over. And what you're going to get is the Macedonians, who were just north of Greece, who spoke Greek. They had two languages, Macedonian and Greek, but followed a lot of Greek. This is going to give them an opportunity to move in and really change the course of Greek history. You can see the Macedonians here, where they begin, and then eventually they're going to take over all of this in these areas here. Let's get this Macedonian culture and the rise of Philip the Second of Macedonia. Greek views of the Macedonians were they were barbarians. They were, outside of Greek culture. Macedonian culture, though they saw themselves as Greek, but they were very hard drinking and focused on war. The Macedonians looked down on the Greeks who, people drank alcohol a lot more back then because the water wasn't always safe. Alcohol, has nutrients, vitamins, calories, and stays because the alcohol killed bacteria in there. So the Greeks who drank, and this is true of the Romans and others who drank wine all day, would water down their, will water down their wine. However, the Macedonians saw that as, for the weaklings, and so they drank straight wine all day. And also a very, very big focus on war. Everything was based around war and manliness. So to be a leader, their view of manliness, to be a leader, you had to be tough, physically tough, a fighter, a hard drinker, and all of that. Now we see this rise to power of Macedonia through Philip II, the father of Alexander the Great. And this picture here is his a recreation. You've probably seen this new technology when we have the skulls of the deceased from the past. They can recreate their faces, and this is what he is thought to have looked like. He had lost his eye in a fight there. But he's really going to forge them into a power. He reorganized after they had lost the war, reorganized the Macedonian military and introduced a new way to fight, especially longer spears. I mean, it is really that simple. Had longer spears and more use of cavalry, horseback soldiers. He's going to forge the Macedonian army into the phalanx. Like the hoplites, but even better, they can move in a group. Very, very. It's not going to be until the Romans that a new, better form of fighting is going to come. And so he's going to use his military power to defeat his local rivals and conquer those around him, and eventually take over the Greeks. Again, you can see the map there. One of the most important here is the Battle of Chirania. This is a Macedonia versus a coalition of Greek city-states, including the Spartans, the Corinthians, and the Athenians. Macedonia is going to win, and this is a big, big turning point in Greek history. Greeks were forced to join an alliance with Macedonia. Philip allows them to run themselves internally however they want. They can, it could be tyranny, they could be an oligarchy, whatever. But they are, they lose their independent agent status in conduct of foreign policy. They are now a part of the Macedonian Empire. So it will never again will the Greek city-states be independent. And that is true for the rest of history up until today. They will never be independent again. They will be ruled by the outside or a monarchy or as a nation there. It's a real, real turning point in all of this. So, Philip now decides to declare war after this on the Persian Empire. He states he's doing this for revenge. Real reason is, again, for part of the way to keep your troops happy was to constantly have warfare for them and to, the spoils of war. Philip was very worried that if he stopped there, his army would become rebellious if they didn't have an external enemy. And so he points to the Persians and will seek revenge for their past invasions of the Greeks there. And that leads us to, eventually Philip will be assassinated by one of his followers. And then you get the rise of Alexander the Great, Alexander III of Macedon. He assumed the throne. He consolidates his power at home by getting rid of his rivals. It's interesting. The Greeks think they have a alliance only with Philip, not with Macedonia. So when Philip dies, many of the Greeks rebel. But then this kind of tells you about the way Alexander's going to conduct himself. He decides he needs to show them what is the price of disloyalty to them. So he invades Greece again and razes Thebes to the ground. To raze a city like this means to destroy it, burn it down. So you see, he can be a brutal leader, and it is a foretelling of his military conquest. All before the age of 30, he is going to conquer much of what is known as the then known world. There, he really is. This is a mosaic you can see even in Pompeii, in Rome. they are going to honor Alexander like this. He is going to be considered really a model for all future leaders and conquerors in the Western world, from Pompey the Great, Pompey Magnus in Rome, to Julius Caesar, to Augustus, heck, to Napoleon, and others beyond him. He is going to be the great one. So that is where we'll pick up next, is looking at Alexander's conquest in the next video. So this is part 1. We'll move on to part 2 in a minute. All right, thank you.